All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Bright Brains, where we dive into the strange, the fascinating, and the unexplained. I'm your host, Isaac, and today we're venturing into the wild. Joining me is author Ty Alexander, here to talk about his latest book, Monstrous, a gripping tale of survival mystery and terror centered around an escaped Yeti and the eerie expanse of Red Oak National Park. But this conversation goes beyond fiction. We're also exploring the world of cryptids, those exclusive or elusive legendary creatures that blur the line between myth and reality. From Bigfoot to the chupacabra, we're digging into the lore, sightings, and the cultural obsession with the unknown. So grab your gear and prepare for the strange. This is one you won't want to miss. Welcome to the show, Ty.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Isaac. It's
Hey,
an
no
honor to
problem.
be on Bright Brains.
Awesome. Glad you're here. This is definitely a topic I'm very interested in. I love talking about the paranormal. So, just before we dig in, just tell us a little bit about yourself and how you came up with the idea for this book.
So I've always been fascinated with cryptids, aliens, all sorts of just unexplained, eerie stuff. High strangeness is the term I hear a lot thrown around, but I've always been interested in that stuff as far back as I can remember. X-Files, my all-time favorite TV show, still. Um, Unsolved Mysteries, I can remember vividly just as a child being just terrified of like the Bigfoot episodes of Unsolved Mysteries. And I got like a DVD not too long ago, just like all of those Bigfoot episodes and one from Unsolved Mysteries. I really like to throw on every now and then. I've just always been interested in that stuff, and Monstrous is kind of like one of these what ifs that people always have. Like, well, who would win in a Bigfoot or a Yeti? It was kind of like the idea. I think I hear that a lot, and I've just always been fascinated by the idea too. And it's the idea of how to bring them together in like a logical and grounded manner was something that really intrigued me, and I kind of saw as a challenge that I wanted to tackle. And this the story, it started out with I think I was probably in my late teens, and me and my friends just shoot like these backyard movies, like backyard horror films, and I had it as an idea for that, and it would just been like two of my buddies in like cheap Party City, monster suits wrestling around on the ground, and it never came to be, and it just stuck with me for years. I tried to write it as a novel once, and I was too young, didn't understand how to do it, didn't understand story, and never came to be. About I'd say probably 10 years ago, myself, my friend Gage, we sat down, we wrote it into a screenplay, and it turned out all right. We actually finished it, which was like a big accomplishment for us to actually sit down, write something, and finish it. So that was nice. But it just sat on the shelf for years and years and years, and I feel like I've matured a lot over the last few years, understood story and how to make a compelling narrative. So I was like, if I'm going to write anything, because I've always wanted to write a novel, it's like this is what I want to take my time to finally bring to life.
Shout out to our sponsor, Bad Product, the modern lifestyle brand that specializes in streetwear apparel and accessories. Their dedication to values such as self-care promote an optimistic vibe that is sure to spread awareness, and we are always happy to endorse a small business that ultimately shares common beliefs. Go check out Bad Product for yourselves. They stay with multiple collections, great deals, and specials. Simply use our coupon code VAGABARD for 10% off your final purchase. For the best quality, choose the Bad Product. We appreciate the support, and without further ado, please do stay tuned and enjoy the show.
That's awesome, man. It sounds like a real labor of love. So I'm curious, is this self-published, or did you like get with an actual publishing company, or?
It is self-published for the time being. I'm reaching out to agents and stuff. It's a very hard industry to get into. It's one of the first things that I have a friend of mine who does who's an author, and the first thing he told me was it's a very high rejection industry. So like never be disappointed when you get rejections, because the book market is constantly changing of what's hot, what's not, what people are looking for, what they're not looking for. Things change at the drop of a hat. One minute vampire stories are hot, the next minute alien books are the next big thing, and it changes so much that you just gotta keep trying. So I mean, I'm just putting out the agents, but in the meantime, I'm going to self-publish it, and then I have that data that I can take to agents as well. Of like, here's how many copies I've sold, here's the interest, and hopefully get a shot at getting it a wider audience.
Awesome, man. So the book comes out June 10th. Where can people go to buy a copy?
So it's going to be through Amazon. Amazon self-published. So June 10th is going to be the paperback and the ebook. The only two formats I'm putting out right now. Possibly down the line, maybe an audiobook. I have some friends who've always wanted to dive into that world. So what better opportunity than to see if they want to cut their teeth at doing my audiobook. So that's maybe something that's going to be in discussion later down the line. If depending on how the book does in general, you know, if it seems like there's a market for it, I mean, absolutely, I think it'd be awesome to have an audiobook of it because I love audiobooks. But yeah, June 10th, paperback ebook on Amazon. You guys can check tyalexanderwrites.com. I keep everything up to date there, like all the news, any updates on the book, all of it's right there.
So do you think like Bigfoot and the Yeti, do you think they're actually real, or do you think they're just urban myths? Or not urban myths, I guess like folklore.
I am a Bigfoot believer through and through. I have right here, I have Bigfoot tattooed on me. Yeah, I love Bigfoot. I mean, I honestly believe in cryptids. And it might not even be, you know, I've talked to people about this before. It might not even be that I believe in them so much as these monsters more than I just want to believe in, you know, something bigger out there, you know, something mysterious, something we haven't found yet. 'Cause I don't like the idea that we've discovered everything. That's just a very like bleak mindset to have, that we found everything. There's no more mystery out there. So cryptids are kind of that anchor to me, is the ultimate what if. And but yeah, I honestly believe in cryptids. Bigfoot is my favorite, but you name it, Loch Ness, Yeti, Chupacabra, all that good stuff.
Yeah, you know, in preparation for this interview, I started reading up more about Bigfoot and the Yeti and the like. And before this interview, I was kind of like, no, Bigfoot is just a folklore kind of thing. But now I'm kind of wondering. And the reason I'm starting to wonder is because there's the video, the Gimlin Patterson
Yeah, Patterson
video.
Gimlin. Yep.
Yeah, Patterson Gimlin, like the one you have tattooed on you. I always thought that was fake, but I recently watched some videos on YouTube and they broke it down. And now I'm kind of wondering, like, it might be real. So, what's your whole take on that?
The Patterson Gimlin film, I think, is always going to be controversial. It's one of those things. It's almost too perfect, and that's why I think the problem is. That's why I think it does have so much controversy around it. Is it's almost too clear of a picture of Bigfoot when there's been nothing else like it. There's been no other anything that comes close to the Patterson Gimlin film since. And I've met Bob Gimlin, I think who it was. Whichever one I'm still alive. It's Patterson Gimlin. There's one that's still alive, one that passed away years ago. But I've met them at a Bigfoot convention here in Ohio, and he seemed like it's a straight up dude. He didn't seem like kind of like a deceptive guy. But I think the Patterson Gimlin film is going to be one of those things that it's lived on for so long, and people can say it's real, people can say it's fake, but I don't think we'll ever really know. It's more of what you want to believe about it, I think.
Yeah. What do you think is the best evidence for the existence of Bigfoot?
I definitely think some of the DNA stuff that's came out in like past few years. There is a project out west. It's the BFRO, the Bigfoot Field Research Organization, and they're pretty big. And they do frequent expeditions out to the Pacific Northwest, which is a hot spot for Bigfoot activity. And they've uncovered some pretty compelling DNA evidence, like scat and hair samples that no one's been able to identify. And I think that's pretty compelling when science, for all it's worth, is usually able to figure something out or at least have an idea. But I think it's really interesting when they find something they don't have an answer for. But I think that is what I would say is the most interesting piece of evidence is just the DNA evidence, because that to me is hard science.
The thing that gets me, one reason why I'm skeptical of Bigfoot is how can this giant creature evade human civilization for so long? That's what I don't get. Like with
Yeah,
all the people who go hunting in the wilderness, I mean, and all the cameras we have, like people have trail cams now, we have satellites. We don't have this guy in 4K, by now. Like,
that is, it's like I read an interesting um little fact. It was like, as video technology increases, as technology increases, things like miracles and monsters and myths go down drastically. And that's an interesting thing, is the more tools you would think we have to find these things that are out there, the less we actually see them. And I mean, there's some very interesting stuff. You really get deep into like Bigfoot lore. There is a this is like fringe, like wackadoo kind of like Bigfoot stuff, but there are like a lot of people that believe Bigfoot is not just a lost missing link, a mysterious monkey, but like some sort of like interdimensional being. Like that's something that is you get into that stuff. That's very interesting, because there's a lot of like Native American myths and things like that, the hairy man, all that. And these Native American legends, like they do have like a magical element to them when they talk about Bigfoot. And people kind of think that could be part of it, is maybe it's just not able to be seen. But I mean, up until like very recently, I mean, things like the silverback gorilla, that was just like a myth for a long time. The Komodo dragon, I mean, these things were the giant squid. I think is one of the best examples. For a long time, these were just myths. Like these were Fisher tales. These were, just scary stories people would tell. And now they're actually like grounded science. They're real. You can go see a Komodo dragon. You can see clear picture videos of the giant squid. That for a long time was just this myth that you'd see in like the Pirates of the Caribbean movies. And now it's a thing that science recognizes because we found them. But there's something else I've always thought of, like, why would it want to be found? I guess why, if Bigfoot really is this intelligent being, maybe it's like actively evading humans. I mean, there's a lot of reason for it to evade humans. We're not necessarily the friendliest animals on the planet, so that might be something. Maybe it's smart enough to know that we aren't the kind of animals you want to necessarily mess around with. So
yeah, that's true. I want to double back to about these Native American folklore. So
Mhm.
that's something I didn't know until I began my research. I had no clue that Native Americans had Bigfoot within their culture, and they had like tales and fairy tales about Bigfoot. I thought
Yeah.
Bigfoot was just kind of like I don't want to say modern, but I didn't know he was that ancient. I didn't know he went back that far. So that kind of gives it more credibility in my eyes.
Yes. Yeah.
Do you know anything about the Native American folklore and like what kind of tales they tell?
A little bit. I mean, there's a lot of there's a lot of Native American legends that have to do with Bigfoot. I mean, he's seen as everything from a guardian to a vengeful spirit. I mean, there are so many interpretations of these creatures or creatures like them in Native American legend, where uh, it's very fascinating. And to bring that point back, talk about just you not realizing about the Native American aspect. It's interesting when you start looking at just world culture in general, like civilizations that have no contact whatsoever. Almost every continent, every civilization has a Bigfoot type legend or stories, and that's interesting because you're talking back to ancient times when people weren't just able to share a story online or make a phone call or take a plane over to another country. These stories were so isolated to these regions. Interesting that there's so many similar legends in different places of the world. I mean, that makes it so compelling to think of, because like, how else would these legends get from civilization to civilization unless there's something actively carrying these legends?
Yeah, that's interesting. One theory I have is that, once upon a time before human beings were in our modern incarnation,
Mhm.
there were like several different like varieties of like humanoids.
Yes.
And maybe for example, there was like the Neanderthal, there was like the Cro-Magnon man, and there's like a whole bunch of others. And I'm wondering if like maybe um Bigfoot is like something that's like within our like collective unconscious, that from when we were sharing this planet with other beings, and maybe he's just a figment of our imagination, but it's something that at one time really was, you know?
Yeah.
What do you think
Um,
about that?
so the one of the nicknames for Bigfoot is the missing link. That's a theory as well. As if you look at human evolution, there's that like very popular like diagram that shows the the monkeys evolving to the humans. That's a very popular uh, piece of iconography that people see all over the place. You can notice in that diagram there is like a jump at one point. There's a jump when it's like it's here and then it's there, and a lot of people have theorized that maybe Bigfoot is that missing link that fills in that gap in that evolutionary trail. And I mean that's a very interesting point. I mean, I think that's something that I could very easily see being fact.
Yeah, another theory I have, and I want to get your opinion on this, is that maybe the government is covering up Bigfoot. Maybe they don't want us to know. And the reason they don't want us to know is because if we find out that Bigfoot is the missing link, then that would prove that evolution is real. And
Yeah.
I know there's like, don't get me wrong, I'm a Christian, I believe in God, but I
Mm-hmm.
also think that evolution is a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they don't want uh, the belief in God to be discredited. So
Yeah.
they cover this up, and they also kind of spread a lot of lies, and they maybe make a lot of hoaxes to discredit the idea of Bigfoot. What do you think
Uh,
about that?
a few years ago, I think it was probably like 5 or 6 years ago, there was like a big news story that was like all over the place. And I remember waking up the morning, I seen it, and I was so excited. But a few years ago, the government released like their Bigfoot files. As part of the Freedom Information Act, where they released the official government documents on Bigfoot. And I was so excited. I woke up, I found that news, and I went online immediately, tracked them down, downloaded them, printed them off. And I remember I printed them off in the morning. I was at the office. I put them in a folder. I was like, I'm not looking at these all day because I'm gonna get home, I'm gonna crack a beer, and I'm gonna read these files. Like you thinking I am gonna have the time of my life tonight. And I get them home, I open them up, and it's nothing but redacted. It's all just
Oh
black
man.
boxes, all just black boxes,
Hmm.
just a whole bunch of nothing. And that's one of the things that gets me is these Freedom of Information Act things. Like they come out, but sure, it's like they still hold so much stuff from us. But um, I could definitely see the government in some way hiding those. Speaking on religion a little bit, have you ever heard of the theory of are you aware of the Nephilim?
I've heard that name before. That's
Yeah.
from the
So
Bible, right?
yes, if I remember right, because I'm not too big on I'm not too well versed in religion, but if I remember right, the Nephilim are the offspring of man and angels, and there's like a pretty decent sized group of people who believe that the Bigfoot are Nephilim.
Hmm.
They're these beings that are you know of man in heaven. So there's a lot. I mean, if you look in the Bigfoot lore, there's really a flavor for everyone. Like you can find everything from Bigfoots are aliens. Bigfoots are interdimensional hopping beings. They're half man, half angel. They're ghosts. I mean, that's one I've heard of. Is they're not actually real. They're ghosts of like ancient creatures that we've killed.
Hmm.
Kind of like haunting us, I guess. Native Americans believe that Bigfoot is, the embodiment of the spirit of nature, guardian of Mother Nature herself. So, I mean, there's really a flavor of ice cream for everyone. If you get into Bigfoot lore, myself, I think Bigfoot, um, I think it's just an elusive animal. I think it's an intelligent, elusive animal. I think it's far smarter than an animal, though, and I think it's able to evade us. And I think it's smart enough to know that it should evade us. I think it's seen what we do. It knows how we treat Mother Earth, how we treat nature, and I think it just makes the decision to avoid us at all costs.
You know, you mentioned several times about Bigfoot possibly being a dimensional being. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah, there is a lot of stories that people will when they see Bigfoot, there'll be like electromagnetic interference. You know, that's something that people have talked about too, is why there's not a clear picture of Bigfoot. Um, is that our technology doesn't work in the presence of Bigfoot. You know, you might be out in the woods and you see a Bigfoot or something, you pull out your phone, and all of a sudden your phone doesn't work or your camera doesn't open up. And people credit that to being a kind of like a time distortion, that it's going in between different dimensions. There's a documentary I watched. I don't remember what it's called. It was on Amazon Prime. It was free, and it was, man, what was it called? It was a beautiful documentary, and it was all about Bigfoot being this like ethereal interdimensional being, and it was fantastic. Let's see here, but I'll find it here. But
All right, then, yeah.
it's a very interesting theory. I've dipped my toes into it a little bit, but I mean, it is fascinating. Like, it is fascinating because um, the idea is that, you know, this creature is smarter, it is more advanced than we are, and it's kind of just like here. It's kind of just like visiting, um, and these interdimensional portals are just opening up. They step through, and when they want to leave, they leave. There are these orbs too that people have reported. If you see, I think there is some like people claim like they take pictures of Bigfoot or something like that, and it'll be blocked out by like an orb. Like, you'll see like a transparent type orb that'll block it out, and people kind of equate that to being like interdimensional particles, I guess. So very interesting stuff.
Yeah, so I have this theory related to the whole dimensional thing, and this is dealing with something that like I barely understand myself. I think it's called quantum mechanics. But my theory is that if have you ever heard the saying, if a tree falls in the forest and nobody is around to hear it, does it make a sound?
Yeah.
So my theory is that like if some of these areas in the wilderness where people rarely go, if there's nobody around to like see something or observe it, then it kind of like, I don't want to say it doesn't exist, but it kind of like becomes inert, like this area, right? And I think that if nobody is around, like no humans, then what happens is that our dimension kind of becomes open around that area. So, like, let's
Okay.
say there's a dimension where there's like a bunch of Bigfoots just walking around in the forest. And in the wilderness, if there's some area where there's nobody around, nobody paying attention to something, one of these Bigfoots can accidentally wander through into our world. And then they'll probably be oblivious. And then, like, maybe a hunter or something will stumble upon the Bigfoot. And then that's when the Bigfoot is like, oh, wait, what's going on? And then something happens and, like, our realities kind of separate. And the
Okay.
Bigfoot goes back to where he's came from.
I
Yeah,
like that. I
yeah,
like
it's
I
kind of
like that.
kind of
I think
out
that's
there.
very
Yeah,
interesting. Yeah. I kind of
yeah,
like that.
and I
That
think that
documentary was called A Flash of Beauty, is what it was
a
called.
flash of beauty. I'll definitely check that out.
Yeah, it is fantastic. But yeah,
Yeah,
I really like that theory. I think that is very interesting.
and I think that this theory also kind of might explain like UFOs, because like nobody's really in the sky, I mean, except for airplanes and things like that. But generally, nobody is in the sky, and most people don't really look up, and maybe sometimes a being from another universe can kind of accidentally fly through into our dimension when they're not supposed to be here, you know? And I wonder
Yeah.
if maybe it's the same thing for the ocean as well, because nobody is in the ocean
Hmm.
really, except for like maybe submarines. But even then, there are so few of those. So maybe something could kind of slip through every now and then and be in our ocean. They say UFOs often come out of the water. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Those are interesting. The was it unidentified submerged objects. Those are very interesting. Um,
yeah,
um, I'm really intrigued by that aspect in UFOs. I mean, I like
hmm,
the flying, classic UFO, but I think the USO portion is fantastic. So you also have like people who like divers and stuff who have claimed that they see multiple UFOs or USOs in the ocean, or maybe glimpses of like cities and things like that underneath the water. Because there is so little we actually know about our oceans, and that
yeah,
would be an interesting idea. Is these aliens aren't out there; they're here the whole time.
yeah.
Very interesting stuff.
Hmm. Yeah, so like earlier, we were saying that maybe Bigfoot is like a past being, or something from humanity's past. Maybe these USOs are something from humanity's future, or UFOs. Maybe they're something from our future. You were talking about the evolutionary chart where the monkey evolves into a human and how Bigfoot is missing. My question is, what happens if humans keep evolving? What will we look like? And I wonder if
Yeah.
maybe that's what the aliens are, you know?
Yeah. There was like a really interesting. I think it was a hoax that went around for a while, but it was still interesting. There's things that I know are like fake and like a hoax, but I think that doesn't make any less interesting. Like I see videos all the time, like TikTok and things like that, are like blatantly fake. But I mean, still, it's interesting stuff. It's piques that storytelling portion of my brain. But there was a video a while back of like an interrogation, like this supposedly leaked video of a alien in Area 51 being interrogated by FBI agents. And like as the interview goes on, you find that it isn't an alien. It's a typical gray alien that you see in pop culture. But as the interview goes on, you find that it's not some extraterrestrial being, but rather it is us. It's what we've evolved to, and it's came back in time. Um, that is super interesting stuff.
Yeah, it is. I'm curious, what are, other than like Bigfoot or the Yeti, what are some other cryptids that you find fascinating?
Oh man, Mothman. I'm here in Ohio, and we're right on the border of West Virginia, and the Mothman. I love the Mothman. That is such a fascinating cryptid. There's all kinds of like supernatural elements to it with the whole bridge collapse that surrounds it. Is supposedly being a harbinger of doom, and uh, because there was a bridge that went across the Ohio River that as the Mothman sightings increased, this bridge collapsed. The whole bridge collapsed and killed dozens of people. And there's people who claim that that morning they saw the Mothman on the bridge, or flying over the bridge. So that's really interesting. I grew up in Southern Ohio, and our cryptid. We have a version of Bigfoot. It's called the Grass Man. Is what our version of Bigfoot is. That's what my grandma would always tell me. Like, get in before dark. The Grass Man will get you. That kind of stuff. Um, and also in Southern Ohio, we have probably one of the most bizarre cryptids, the Loveland Frog. Have you ever heard of the Loveland Frog?
I've never heard of Loveland
Okay.
Frog, but
Well,
that's crazy because I spend a lot of time in Loveland with my
oh,
job.
really? Okay.
Yeah, I deliver equipment and I'm always over there. So the Loveland Frog, yeah, I've never heard of that.
So Loveland Frog, and there's it just passed actually. There's a annual Loveland Frogman Festival down south that is fantastic. If you're ever down that area, it's in March. It is a fun time. There's some amazing artists and just cool people there. It's I think a weekend event now. It takes place like right outside of Loveland, and there's like a hotel conference center that it takes place in. It is a blast. But the Loveland Frog was this cryptid that was spotted, I believe, in the 60s. And it is a small humanoid frog. And it was spotted, I think, a handful of times, 5 or 6 times that were like reported. And what makes it very interesting is that it was this humanoid frog, there was a group of three and they had magic glowing wands. So it's this weird, bizarre thing that is just so, I guess, kind of endearing. It's, it's such a unique cryptid, and that's always stuck with me. I've always had a soft spot for that, just because of the absurdity of it. This wizard frog. I always thought that was just interesting. So, that would be it. And then, of course, the chupacabra and the Jersey Devil. The Jersey Devil is just a whole nother version, a whole nother type of cryptid. And it has the whole like satanic element to it, this like witchcraft, demonic element to it that I think makes it such a unique cryptid. And then the chupacabras, who are a group of cryptids that were spotted in mainly Puerto Rico, but they're also sightings in southern United States, like Texas and New Mexico, things like that. And what makes it so interesting is there's so much lore around it, with it being like a government experiment, it possibly being of alien origin, just things like that really intrigue me. Like the cryptids that are kind of out there.
Yeah, there's so many of them too. Like for example, one thing I've realized is that just about every body of water, like every lake in America and around the world, has some sort of monster associated with it. Like of course there's the Loch Ness monster. And but the Great Lakes, I think like Lake Michigan has a monster associated. Well, let me see
Yeah,
if I can.
there's Champ, Lake Erie. I think it's Bessie. We have Bessie,
Mhm.
who's our cryptid, our water cryptid. Um, Funny enough, I have this deck of cards I bought. I keep here in my little man cave. It says deck of cards I bought off of. Let me find it here.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
not
no,
gonna
it's
show.
like that. There we go.
Yeah,
I see it.
I
Yeah.
bought these off of Amazon, and they're
Hmm.
really cool because they're like, it's a whole deck of cards of, it's playing cards, but they're each one is a different cryptid. So there's even things on here that I've never heard of, but it's very interesting. Little deck of cards. It was like $8,
Hmm.
and each one is a cryptid. It tells you a little bit about them. So it's super fascinating the amount of cryptids there are.
Awesome. I definitely have to check that out. One cryptid that's always fascinated me. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's called, and I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing this right. I'm going to try. It's called Mokele Mbembe.
Yes, yeah,
Yeah, for people who don't know, supposedly it was a dinosaur that lives in the Congo. And in my opinion, it kind of looks like a brontosaurus, the
yes.
dinosaur with the long neck. So what do you know about that one?
Makela Mimbe is very fascinating because there's so many stories from like early adventurers going into the Congo, and I think there's even like the amount of stories. I think some scientists like even believe that it may have been like a relic of the past, like maybe gone now, but at one point it could have been like an overhang,
Hmm.
kind of a leftover of a bygone time. But there are some fascinating stories that come out of that, and super like interesting tales that kind of remind you of like adventure movies. These brave British adventurers traveling into the Congo, and all of a sudden they're attacked by a giant dinosaur and have to fend it off with their big guns and their manly skills. I mean, I think it's so interesting, and they make for like really good tales. Michaela Bembe is, I don't know if there's been like a sighting of Michaela Bembe in a long time, but what made it so compelling was you had these like adventurers that would come out with these stories of, I went into the Congo and I got attacked by a dinosaur. But you'd also have the natives of the region who, it wasn't just a story to them. Like they believed and feared this thing and worshipped it. So it's super interesting because to us it's just this like story, but to them it was a real being. So it's hard to say it's fake, because why would these people who live in this region, what why would they fear and worship this thing if it was just fake?
Yeah, one thing I've learned too, they said that if a dinosaur was to still be alive during this time period, the only place it could survive theoretically would be the Congo. And that's
Yeah.
because they have the heat, the temperature, and the humidity to support a dinosaur. And I thought that was pretty interesting. The fact that there's something that could a dinosaur could still be alive after all this time. I also wonder if maybe that's what the Loch Ness monster was. You know?
Yeah. Nessie, the main theory with her is a plesiosaur. That's always been like the popular, even like the imagery of Nessie. Um, I have like a really nice print of her like hanging on my wall. I'll have to show you after we're done recording. But yeah, even like the imagery of her is always this plesiosaur. And I think it's sad because like I don't think there's been a sighting of Nessie in such a long time.
Mhm.
Um, which like makes you think like if it was real, like did we kind of see the last of its kind? It's kind of like a sad thing to think about. Like if it is real, like if it's not just this fisherman story, and we were seeing like something amazing, and now it's gone.
I think that like just like the Mokole, the dinosaur in the Congo, I think that maybe some of these dinosaurs, like small populations, were able to survive for long periods of time. But like over time, their population just slowly dwindled. And there were parts of the world that were covered in water that aren't now. And maybe one of those, what was it that you call Loch Ness, paleosaur?
Plesiosaur.
Plesiosaur. Maybe
Yep.
one of those, maybe a family of those plesiosaurs got stuck in a lake that eventually became the Loch Ness, and maybe eventually the parents died off, and it was just like one little baby
Mm,
plesiosaur left for a little bit of time, and then eventually that one died as well. You know?
right. It's like one of those sad things to think about, but it's like it's crazy that maybe we were like living in a time when something like that was still here. It's just it's interesting because like to me I get kind of sentimental about cryptids. I don't know if it's came across here, but like I don't know, cryptids to me yeah, I've talked about it many times with people. It's like I kind of mentioned earlier. It's like it's a world that I really like love. Like I really do have like a love for this like lore and this like world of cryptozoology. Um, because I think just mystery is such a fascinating thing, such a thing that we should always hold dear to us is like not knowing everything. I really do hate the idea of us knowing everything there is to know,
Yeah.
and cryptids really keep that feeling alive that there's still something out there that we have yet to even see. Um, but I read an interesting quote that made me think a lot a few weeks ago. I was kind of scrolling through Instagram, and it was a picture of like the forest, and it said, I hope that there is something amazing that mankind has never seen out here, and I hope that we never see it." And that made me think because like, and I kind of touched a little bit about it on Monstrous, is the idea of us as humans, we kind of corrupt everything that we touch.
Yeah.
Everything becomes business. Everything becomes monetized. We see a lot of that in just nature itself, and that may be why cryptids and things like that just aren't as prevalent anymore. Is maybe we have pushed these things to extinction because we just constantly encroach on these habitats. But I hope there is things like Bigfoot and stuff out there. And people have always talked about the only way we're ever going to truly prove that Bigfoot's real is if someone kills one. Like that's the only way that there would ever be definitive evidence, if someone took a body of a Bigfoot and was like, "Here's this thing I found." So, and to that, I think that's the only way to prove something. Maybe it's just best to keep it a mystery.
That's true. Speaking of a body of a Bigfoot, are you familiar with the Minnesota Iceman?
Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That is fascinating because it's there's so many people and like there's not been nothing seen of it, but it was literally like they were carrying this thing all across the United States,
Mm.
and so many people claim to see it, and there's a lot of people who there's no photos of it. There are like
So, real quick,
posters.
maybe before you go further, maybe we should just let people know what it was briefly.
Yeah.
Maybe just explain to the audience.
So there was man, I think it was in the early 1900s. There was a traveling circus, a traveling freak show, who claimed to have ape man, a real life ape man that died, and they had it frozen, and they were just carrying this thing all over the United States in this ice box. And people would go to the carnival and they'd pay to go in and see it. And it was early 1900s, so no pictures of it exist, just stories. And people talk about it being like it was like an actual living, rotting corpse. Like it wasn't a fake thing. It wasn't a suit or like a prop. Like it was an actual body of some sort of missing link. And that's all we have of it is these stories. And it's became infamous over the years because there's all these stories that maybe it is still in existence. Like maybe someone has it preserved. Maybe it's hidden away somewhere. Maybe there is pieces of it, DNA, whatever it may be, still in existence, and they're being kept from us.
Yeah, one in the story that I read, they said the guy who owned the body, he actually had scientists investigate it, and like two prominent scientists who were, you know, big names at the day, they said it was real. And what this guy says is that eventually, like the U.S. government came and confiscated it from him, and they gave
Wow.
him like a fake, like a replica or whatever. And that goes well, but it. So it's two things: either one, this guy is lying, or he's telling the truth. If two
Yeah.
scientists looked at it and said, "Hey, it's real," and they published a paper on it, the government doesn't want us to know, like I said before, because they don't want us to know that evolution is real. So they took it and then they gave him a fake that's less convincing to discredit him, and who knows, maybe it is still in some warehouse like in the Raiders of the Lost Ark or something. It's right next to the Ark of the Covenant. But it's possible. But when I read that story, that's one thing that I was like, hold on, maybe Bigfoot is real.
Yeah, I mean that there's stories like that all over throughout history of these like cryptids and things like that being caught and shown off. Even when I talked about the Jersey Devil um, a while back, in the episode here, there was even a time when it was really big in like the early 1900s. There was even like carnivals that had taken goats and glued wings onto them and stuff, and would take them around saying that they had the Jersey Devil. And yeah, just super like
That's wild.
there's some crazy stories out there of things like that. But the Minnesota Iceman is one of those things that it's super interesting because of all the different stories and claims have been made over the years. Like it's not one of the things like these Jersey Devil hoaxes. They died off. They're kind of like joked about every now and then when someone uncovers a story of them. But then you have the Minnesota Iceman, which still today and people talk about. They talk about it as this real thing that it was a real Bigfoot getting carried around.
Yeah, that's wild. They used to do some like really crazy stuff like that back in the day. You hear about these side shows and these traveling carnivals. I kind of wish we had stuff like that now. Like I want to go to a carnival and see Bigfoot. I don't want to, throw darts at a balloon or something. I want to see
Right.
Bigfoot. But what's your favorite depiction of a cryptid in pop culture?
Um, Man, there's some good ones. I'm a big fan of like the Sci-Fi Channel, like the early Sci-Fi Channel stuff, like back in the early
Mm-hmm.
2000s. Sci-Fi Saturdays used to be my jam, and man, they had some great low budget, just like schlocky cryptid
Yeah,
movies back then. I love that stuff. I have a soft spot for it. But there is Harry and the Hendersons. Have you ever seen that movie?
yeah. I've seen bits and pieces
Yeah,
of it, but
yeah.
yeah,
I have such a soft spot for that depiction of Bigfoot because it's just a great film. Uh, a lot of times when you see Bigfoot, it's this like unstoppable killing machine, and it was so interesting to see a different take on it and done so well. Like I have so many fond memories of being a kid and with my dad watching Harry and the Hendersons, and that's probably one of my favorite depictions of Bigfoot in like film media. Now, if we're talking books, because I'm an avid reader, I don't just like to write. I like to I love to go out my way and read. There is a book that came out. I read it this year, and it actually really like inspired me to like go through and do this, like to finally sit down and put pen to paper and write a novel. And it's this book. It's called Rogue by Luke Phillips. It came out, I think, back in. Hang on, I think it came out last year, but it is. It came out in 2023. It is a great novel. So fun. It's got really cool concepts in it. Has a conspiracy aspect to it of, the government being involved with covering up Bigfoot and things like that. And it was just a wild ride. I loved that book so much. It's became not just my favorite Bigfoot book, but probably one of my favorite novels just in general. That's a fantastic depiction of Bigfoot. I would implore anyone, if you have the time, if you like to read, go out of your way to find Rogue by Luke Phillips. And also Monstrous by Ty Alexander.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely had to check that book out. I'm trying to search my Audible account because I read a book about Bigfoot a while back that was really good. And I can't remember what it is. I'm not going to search too long because I don't want to, let's see here. But I wish I had looked this up before I started this interview. But if I figure out what it is, I'll put it in the show notes. But it was really good. It was a book I got for free on Audible. And
okay.
It was like a modern day kind of retelling, or not retelling, but basically it was like these people started this sort of green city, like in the middle of the forest.
De-Evolution.
Maybe that's what.
That's it.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that was it. And I thought that was really good. That could have been a movie right there.
I think it's supposed to be, because I have the paperback. I don't have it with me, but on the paperback, it has right in front. It has on the cover, soon to be a major motion picture on the cover. Max Brooks, he's the guy that wrote World War Z. If you ever heard of that.
Yeah, World War Z. I remember reading the book for that. The book was far better than the movie, though.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, not even a comparison.
Yeah.
But speaking of movies, Bigfoot, I talked about Harriet Henderson's. If you're looking for like a Bigfoot horror film, there is a great movie called Exists, and it is a found footage movie. And before anyone goes, I'm not a big fan of found footage movies either, but it's done so well where it's not, the shaky turn away from the monster every time it comes in the shot kind of thing. Very well done, and it's by the guy who did the Blair Witch Project in the 90s. Fantastic, great Bigfoot design. A good story too. It's got just a really good story that makes you kind of feel for the creature at the end. That if you want to see a good Bigfoot movie and you want a little horror with it, Exists. Check that out.
I definitely have to check that out, man. What would you say to skeptics who dismiss cryptid stories as hoaxes? What would you say to the skeptics who don't believe in Bigfoot?
I guess, just don't be afraid to believe in the extraordinary. I mean, I think sometimes people don't want to believe in things because they're afraid maybe they might come off as stupid or might be made fun of. It doesn't matter how much evidence there is for something. I mean, sometimes you just got to believe in things. I mean, people believe in a lot of stuff that isn't, tangible, isn't there in front of them. But you got to believe that there's more out there than what we see. I think that is what cryptozoology is. Cryptozoology is the study of cryptids. And I've always looked at it as not defining what cryptozoology is, but defining what it isn't. And cryptozoology isn't the study of wives' tales. It isn't the study of hearsay and conjecture. It's the study of believing in something extraordinary. And that's what I'd have to say. It's just believe. Why would you not want to believe in something like that? If you, to me, I think the idea of being out in the water and there being a giant serpent somewhere in the water, that's scary, but that's also kind of fun. So I let myself believe in that. Just believe. That's the only thing I can really say. If you're a skeptic, just let yourself believe. You'll have so much more fun if you just believe.
Are there any other sort of paranormal interests that you have?
UFOs, big UFO guy. I love UFO conspiracies. Roswell, I got to go to Roswell last year. That was a dream trip of mine that I never thought I'd be able to go. And funny enough, I got to go for my job sent me there. So I was
Awesome.
so grateful. My boss, I told my boss, like, because we have an account in Roswell. And I was like, if we ever get the opportunity to go to Roswell, I want to go. And he told me, he's like, I will make sure that I send you to Roswell. And he held up his end of the bargain. He sent me to Roswell, and I had the time of my life. He sent me there on a holiday, so I got a day to myself to just explore the city. And
That's awesome.
I love UFOs, aliens fascinate me. I would dare say I believe more in aliens than I do cryptids, which I believe in
Yeah.
cryptids wholeheartedly. But aliens, I mean, that is far beyond just people telling stories and taking blurry pictures. I mean, that is science. Like there's more out there in the universe than what we see.
Yeah, for sure. What stood out to you in Roswell? Like, what did you see during your time there?
Just the way the town embraces it. I find that to be just so cool when a town has something like that and they just embrace it, because man, that is awesome when you have a town that just fully embraces something so iconic and so infamous. Talk about Mothman, Point Pleasant, West Virginia. They do the same thing. They fully embraced Mothman. Like that is a main source of revenue for that town. Like they have a boom when Mothman Fest comes around. Like that's the town builds up for that. Here in recent years, Loveland, Ohio has finally started to embrace Frogman. They're benefiting from it. But yeah, Roswell, man, it is alien central. Like you cannot turn your head without seeing an alien. Everything's an alien. Alien pizza, alien bar, alien grocery store. Like it is just insane how much they have just taken hold of what they're known for and just held on to it.
That's awesome. Yeah, I would love to go there one day. The thing that always stood out to me about these aliens is, you know, why would a UFO crash in reference to Roswell? Like, if they're
Mhm.
so advanced, what could cause a UFO to crash? That's what I want to know.
If I recall, I think that when Roswell, the night of the crash, I believe there was a storm. So I almost wonder if it's some sort of like distortion. I mean, maybe something maybe they got struck by lightning. I mean, maybe that messed up the guidance system. They tanked. It could have been military intervening. Maybe they were shot out of the sky.
Hmm.
It might not necessarily been just a happenstance. They just dipped the nose too low and crashed into a field. I mean, there's probably outside forces that caused the crash.
That's true. You know, there, let's see here. Let me see if I can find this. I was looking at this chart one day, and basically it was showing technological progress, right? And from like the start of history up until like the 50s, it was just like a slow, steady increase. But then after Roswell, it just went boop, like it
Yeah.
went high up, and we've had so much technological
Mm-hmm.
advancement, and I think that's due to the crash UFO.
Oh,
I think they
absolutely.
took it, yeah, and they've been reverse engineering all of this stuff.
I'm pretty sure during those like hearings last year, I'm pretty sure they like owned up that they were reverse engineering stuff. I mean, I think that was
Hmm.
brought up in that. But 100%. I mean, it's as someone that works with electronics, I mean, the stuff we have is just incredible. I mean, it blows my mind every day. I mean, I work with electronics on a daily basis, and every day my mind's blown by something that we can do with electronics. It blows my mind. I mean, the diode board is just an insanely simple uh, creation that just turned everything around. I mean, we had nothing. Diode board came out, everything changed, and that just came out of nowhere. Um, we talked about the Area 51, reverse engineering that. Have you ever heard like some of the
Hmm.
darker conspiracies of that, of how we got the
No,
technology?
I
So
have not.
there was like a darker conspiracy theory that sure, we got this technology from aliens, but it was as part of a trade. So there is a conspiracy that I believe it was Richard Nixon met with aliens from another world. It was a kind of a meeting, a coordinated meeting that they would give us technology in exchange for human beings. So that's when you start seeing alien abductions and mutilations and things like that. And the theory is that, sure, we got all this technology, but for blood, we paid in blood.
That's something to think about, man.
Yeah.
And that would explain all these abductions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's wild, man. All right, dude. Yay, this has been a great conversation. I really learned a lot. I'm really looking forward to your book. I'm definitely going to check it out June 10th. It's on Amazon. And I'm also assuming you have your website. What is your website? If you can just promote that. And
TyAlexanderWrites.com.
awesome.
You can check me out on Instagram at TyAlexanderWrites. I keep everything up to date there. I'm constantly posting updates on where the book is at. As we lead up to publishing, I'm going to keep it up to date there so everyone knows where to find me. If you have any questions or anything, you just want to talk cryptids, hit me up on my website. I have a contact me section on my website where you can shoot me a message directly, and we can talk cryptids or about the book. I love talking to people and telling people about the story I've crafted here. It means a lot to me. It's truly a passion project, and it's something a lot more to me than a book. I mean, it's just the story I feel like I was always meant to tell, and I'm really excited for people to see it and get in their hands.
Awesome. Do you plan to write more books?
Yes. Monstrous. You're getting a little exclusive here. Monstrous is the first in a series. So,
all right.
Monstrous is the first of what I'm calling the Monstrous world. I'm planning 4 novels around it, and I've got the second one started, third one planned, and the fourth one also planned. But the second one is well into writing. But yeah, it's part of a series that I'm crafting. I'm wanting to just tell a really good story with these cryptids over these 4 books, and what cryptids mean to us what cryptids mean to our world, I guess, is what I want to show. It's like what place they have.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it, man. I could tell it's going to be a good book. You got a lot of passion, and you really love what you do. So I can't wait to check it out, and I hope my audience does too, man.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate having me on. I mean, you're one of the first people that reached out. So, I put the little post on Reddit, and man, you hit me up like immediately. So I was very grateful that you invited me on, and this has been super fun. Talk about cryptids and high strangeness. Like, this is what I love. I could talk for hours if you wanted me to, but thank you for letting me have the opportunity.
Hey, no problem. That's a wrap for this episode of Bright Brains, where curiosity meets conversation. If you enjoyed the ride, make sure to follow, rate, and review the show. It helps more minds find their way here. You can keep up with me on Facebook at Bright Brains Podcast, on Blue Sky at brightbrainspod.bsky.social, and last but certainly not least, Instagram at bright_brains_podcast. And remember, that's Bright Brains with a Z. So check me out for behind the scenes content, episode updates, and more thought-provoking discussions. Stay sharp, stay curious, and I'll catch you next time. Keep that brain bright.